Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Twitter space. I'm Tamara Ugolini. It's actually my first ever Twitter space, so bear with me as we sort out the kinks here. We're just waiting for Sheila to join, so we'll give her another few seconds to hop on and start to populate our space, hopefully a little bit more. Hang tight for just a few more seconds as we get everybody sorted and on. We have some fun things to chat about as the special rapporteur has published his first report on foreign interference in Canada.
Sheila.
Hi, very sorry I'm late. I had some technical catastrophes with some of our recording software, but I'm here and I'm very eager to host this Twitter Spaces with Tamara. This is not my first Twitter Space. However, this is our first that we've ever hosted to replace our live stream. And we are not quite ready to announce why we're doing a Twitter space instead of a live stream. But if people want to sort of stay tuned to Rebel News throughout the day, because we will be announcing why we're doing a Twitter space as opposed to a live stream, and we'll tell you how you can sort of get involved a little bit. So I'm very eager, I'm very excited, but I think everybody's really going to like it.
And don't worry, the live stream isn't going anywhere long term. We will be back in action there as well, and have some exciting things to share with you when and if when that happens, not if, but when. So I suppose just some housekeeping things before we get started here. We are also simultaneously hosting this chat or this space on Rumble and YouTube. So if you're on either of those channels, you can still send us a Rumble rant or a super chat. And we will not obviously be able to share it on screen since this is speaker only, but we will read your rants and chats to us. And then, of course, we are giving speaker priority as necessary or as we come across them to our subscribers. So to anyone who's a subscriber joining us in this space, thank you, first of all, for your support. But also, if you want to send us a question or engage with us, please do that. And we'll do our best to give you priority in commentary. So we do have, there's a space in this space for you to pose your questions to us. And we look forward to hearing from all of the people who have joined us in here today.
And now, Tamara, I'm sorry, I missed the production meeting again, technical catastrophes. Are we able to play audio in the Twitter space here?
So we're going to attempt it. And please bear with us to all of our viewers if it goes awry. But we do have some clips to share with you. And we're going to, it just depends on whether or not there will be a lag in the clip playing. So, you know, if it's 10, 20 seconds, just bear with us, the clip will play. And then, of course, if you don't hear it or if something else is happening, please let us know so that we can try to pivot and correct that. But we can also just share kind of a recap of what the clip was, but we are going to try to play them directly because I think it will help inform our discussion.
Okay. So best of luck to us then. I think we should move directly into, I think probably the biggest story in Canada over the last, I guess it's 24 hours, maybe 30 hours. And that is the unsurprising finding by special rapporteur, a longtime friend of Justin Trudeau's family, skiing associate, Trudeau Foundation member, and the man who also led the commission which blocked us from attending the debates, and former Governor General, but I think he's pretty well nuked his reputation there, David Johnston, ruling out the possibility of a public inquiry into alleged Chinese interference in Canadian elections. Who is shocked by that? I think that was exactly what the whole thing was set up to do.
Right. And so, well, that leads us into the first clip that we have. And maybe I shouldn't put the cart before the horse here, but the whole idea behind the fact that he will not be condoning and a public inquiry will not be taking place into alleged Chinese interference in the Canadian electoral process is because this is sensitive material of, utmost concern for our national security. And to which I would say on the other side of the coin is, it is a threat to our national security. So which poses more of a threat, letting Canadians see and know exactly what's going on, or the fact that there is clear indicators of foreign interference into our democracy?
Well, and who would cover up foreign interference and hide accountability from the public but the Chinese? Like, if you don't want me to think that you're politically contaminated by the Chinese, maybe let's not act like the CCP. Maybe. Let's see if we can play this clip. And again, bear with us because we might not be able to, but let's hear it from David Johnston himself explaining why Canadians don't deserve transparency.
And again, if there's a few second lag, just bear with us. Might be about 10, 20 seconds. I don't know if it's going to work.
Okay, well, maybe it's an impossibility, and maybe Efron can let us know in the chat on Slack if we cannot. Okay, so maybe we'll just bump ahead. Yes, but to paraphrase,
Sheila, hold on.
David Johnston.
I wonder if
yeah, go
I
ahead.
can try to play it through my phone. Let me just see here. Maybe you can tell me if you can hear it okay. I'm going to put my volume on the computer way up.
This first report.
Oh,
can you hear it now?
Yeah.
Public inquiry.
Yeah, let's start from the top.
Process is required to investigate foreign interference. Okay, I'll restart. Another central piece of my mandate and a requirement of this first report was to determine if a separate public inquiry or public process is required to investigate foreign interference in our democracy. There have been widespread calls for a public inquiry from media, opposition parties, and Parliament through a motion passed in the House of Commons. When I began this process, I thought I would come to the same conclusion, that I would recommend a public inquiry. While it would have been an easy choice, it would not be the correct one.
there you have it.
Is that what?
Yes, yeah. So David Johnston just says that that would have been the easier choice, but it would not have been the correct one. And I guess that's because it would likely hinder the showing for the Liberals, for the Justin Trudeau Liberals. It would undermine their governance, show that they are compromised, and this would not reflect well on a government who is fighting in various places across the world for the upholding of democracy.
You know, maybe let's play this next clip, if you wouldn't mind, Tamara, because David Johnston here is now complaining about the leaked intelligence that led to this and the reporting on the leaked intelligence, wherein now we all know that there was alleged Chinese foreign influence in multiple ridings across the country, and the bullying of Michael Chong's family, an intimidation of Michael Chong for voting for a genocide motion. Special rapporteur David Johnston complains about the fact that Canadians are learning about these allegations in the media. I suppose he probably would wish that you never learned about them at all because he doesn't want to have this inquiry. So maybe if we can, that's the second clip there, Tamara, if you wouldn't mind.
Foreign interference is not usually embodied in discrete, one-off pieces of intelligence. It cannot be dealt with on a one-off look-when-I-found basis. The limited leaked intelligence and subsequent reporting have led to misapprehensions relating to incidents that are alleged to have occurred in the 2019 and 2021 elections. Moreover, I have found no examples of ministers, the Prime Minister, or their offices, knowingly or negligently failing to act on intelligence, advice, or recommendations on the issues I have investigated related to the 2019 and 2021 elections. However, I did find that there are significant and unacceptable gaps in the machinery of government.
These unacceptable gaps could never equate to the negligence that he claims to have not found, right?
Well, and okay, so who am I supposed to believe here? CSIS leakers who are putting their jobs at risk and who are now the subject of witch hunt against them because they were so concerned about foreign meddling in Canadian politics, or the Liberals who are trying to protect themselves and cover their asses? Who am I supposed to believe here? I'm sorry, David Johnston. The guys who have everything to lose by telling the truth, or the guys who have everything to gain by lying? Who should I believe?
That's a really great way of putting it. And also to note for anybody who isn't aware, those CSIS whistleblowers are a target of a separate investigation launched by Justin Trudeau, which apparently takes more seriously the fact that our own Canadian citizens were so concerned for our national security that they leaked this information to the media. wherein the same government was keen on just turning a blind eye, really, to any allegations of foreign interference. And now, as we've already mentioned, has hired their close family friend to partake in this investigation, which is ongoing, right? This is just the first report, and I don't know the time frame for the release of the second report. But this, just even basing anything off of the clip that was just shared, he clearly notes that there's gaps and holes that he finds concerning, but there's nothing really big to worry about. There's no negligence. There was no foreign interference. There's just these gaps and holes. I mean, what does that even mean?
Well, and let's not kid ourselves. I think you're overstating it when you say that the Liberals they're not concerned about foreign influence. They are concerned about foreign influence, especially the kind they imagine, when they accuse the convoy of being a Kremlin-led operation apropos of literally no evidence whatsoever except their own distrust and dislike and disdain for the working class uprising on their doorstep. They created foreign influence out of the ether in their own minds and maligned the single largest human rights movement of our generation with the stain of that, while they were simultaneously the recipients of foreign help that helped them win, I think it's close to a dozen ridings at this point. Kenny Chiu, a conservative, an ethnically Chinese conservative in BC, lost his seat. So for anybody saying, oh, this is just anti-Chinese rhetoric, actually no, because it's anti-communist rhetoric from me, definitely. But Kenny Chiu, ethnically Chinese, lost his seat in BC, thanks in no small part to foreign influence. Alice Wong, again, very ethnically Chinese sounding name. She lost her seat in BC for the same reason. And then we have Michael Chong, again, very Chinese sounding last name. His family was intimidated by the CCP, and Justin Trudeau knew about it. And by the way, Bill Blair, he didn't bother to do anything with the information that he had. I suppose this is the gaps that Johnston is talking about. He didn't do anything with that information because he sat on it for 2 months so that it would be helpful to the Liberals in the election campaign. So he was willing to allow Chinese foreign influence to intimidate Canadian legislators as long as it helped the Liberals. And these people are going to lecture us about Russian influence in the convoy. Well, it's ridiculous.
And don't forget, too, that if you even so much as questioned that, you were labeled a racist. And to question all of this is being flipped back on the head of the questioner as you're some xenophobic racist for even thinking that this could happen in our true north, strong and free country. Now we have.
I guess I am. I guess I am xenophobic in that I don't want outsiders to influence our election. So I guess I am. I guess I am xenophobic in that. It depends on the definition that you use. But we should show this. I think it's the next one, the next clip, or play it. I guess because we'll only hear it. And this is
the third one.
Johnston getting. He's getting a little prickly with people like me and Tamara who are like, aren't you pretty chummy with the Liberals and Justin Trudeau in particular? Too chummy to be leading this investigation? And he scowls about that anyway.
I've been fortunate in my public life to have served as chair of or member of advisory committee or task forces on probably 2 to 3 dozen different occasions over those years, with appointments by prime ministers, several, premiers, several, ministers, and on none of those previous occasions has my impartiality or integrity ever been questioned. This is the first time it has happened. And let me simply say that's very troubling for me, because this kind of baseless set of accusations diminishes trust in our public institutions and deters people who are publicly minded, who are quite prepared to take on public service responsibility, task forces, and so on. There's a chill on that. And that's very troubling.
You know, the gaslighting of anyone who dares question the narrative or question the intent of an individual, given their background, their connections, where they came from, historical context, that concerns me more or almost equally as these allegations of foreign interference do. It seems to me like these liberals and this liberal government is really keen on gaslighting people who question them or question their authority. And it reminds me of that South Park episode, sorry, where Cartman is like, respect my authority. Anyway, so this to me is just par for the course. For, you know, if you have a strong, robust democracy, a cornerstone of it is being able to scrutinize, to debate, to ask questions, and to get to the root of issues and form good policies, good procedures, good governance. And instead, what we've seen alongside obviously foreign interference, which undermines the democracy, is an inability to question, to scrutinize, to debate that has been highlighted, especially over the last 3 years with the COVID narrative and the way that the government has conducted itself more in an authoritarian manner than an actual democratic nation. And then, so this gaslighting that David Johnston is saying here, that how dare you question my impartiality and my integrity, and this has never been questioned until now. Well, I think that is a good thing, because then we get to the bottom of issues when we can scrutinize them, question them, and debate them.
Well, yeah, like who the hell does this guy think he is, that he's beyond reproach, that he's untouchable, that us unwashed masses shouldn't question his integrity? If you are taking an appointment by the government, guess what? The people paying your salary get to ask questions about who you are, what you're doing, and where you come from. That's how it works. He might have been the Queen's representative in Canada for a time, but he sure as hell isn't the king. And we get to ask him questions. The peasantry might have opinions on certain things. And the fact that he's so appalled that someone might wonder, like, hey, what's this connection about you guys being like ski buddies while you're sort of examining Justin Trudeau's behavior now, that's a little bit sus, I think, as the kids say. That he's getting himself onto the old fainting couch because we asked a question. Like, get a handle on yourself. Yes. People are going to ask questions.
It's standard pearl clutching by the Liberals. Like, oh my goodness, I've been scrutinized. How dare you? That to me is just the gaslighting. It always, as soon as someone is gaslighting you into thinking that you shouldn't question them, it makes me question them even more.
Well, it's same people calling people who are like, maybe you shouldn't have to get a vaccine to keep your job. And the Liberals are calling those people racist, sexist, homophobes, that there should be no space for you in public life, that you don't care about your neighbors, that you're basically grandma murderers. The same side of the argument now is telling us, how dare you question my integrity? Mm-hmm. Give me a break. I'm sorry.
All right. We have one last special rapporteur clip to play with you. And this is David Johnston on CTV News. I guess highlighting the xenophobic and racist nature that this is trying to be spun out onto Canadians who are questioning the electoral integrity of certain elected officials.
For the average Canadian out there, what are some of the fresh takeaways from the report today?
Well, I think the fresh takeaway is that foreign influence is very real, pernicious, growing, not going to go away, and it does real danger. It especially does danger to our minority communities, our ethnic communities, who in many respects, and I think of the Chinese communities right now with Chinese influence, are victims of this and carry this burden of being the wonderful Canadian citizens. All of a sudden are viewed with suspicion because of this foreign influence, which attempts to get at people and influence them one way or another. That's really an awful situation. And I think we must understand that there are influences at work that are trying to turn ourselves against one another with respect to that kind of thing. A lot of work to be done, public education, but I think we have to lead with our elected officials to bring this to the forefront and say, it's real, it's tough, and here's what we're doing, and here's what we must do more effectively to be sure people understand what we're dealing with.
Yeah, no, foreign influence does affect the Chinese community first. Just ask Alice Wong, Kenny Chu, and Michael Chong, members of the Chinese community who have either been intimidated or lost their seats because of foreign influence in their ridings. Yeah, I will agree, actually, but not in the way that he thinks. People with relatives in China are subject to the bullying of the CCP. So yes, it is the Chinese community affected first, but not because there's bigotry against them, because we want to help them by not allowing the Chinese to bully their families either here or back home. The only person making this us versus them as far as the Chinese community are the Liberals. They're the ones who keep calling us racist because we don't want the CCP meddling in our elections. It's not Chinese people. It is the Chinese government and it is the CCP. And it's the bigotry of low expectations to think that conservatives can't tell the difference.
Yeah, and the media to further amplify that sort of rhetoric is, I guess, to be expected this day and age in Canada and also North America in general. It looks like here one of the sections of the report, and it's a lengthy report and I haven't gone through it all, admittedly, but I just want to read an excerpt on Johnston's, where he notes that he will be moving forward with his mandate, and there will be more public hearings and another report on the way. He says here, and I quote, "Rather, the public process should focus on strengthening Canada's capacity to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference in our elections and the threat such interference represents to our democracy. To that end, in the remaining 5 months of my mandate, I intend to conduct public hearings to address these issues and then provide a second report. During the balance of my mandate, I will also remain available to examine any additional allegations raised that fall within my terms of reference." So it looks like he has another 5 months worth of investigations to do. And in that time, he's going to conduct public hearings. I'm interested to see how that will move forward and how truly public those are and what kinds of individuals he will garner the advice and I don't want to say testimony, but I guess for lack of a better word, testimony from. And it's funny to me that he doesn't rule out that there may be additional allegations that come forward in the next 5 months.
You know what would help us get to the bottom of those allegations in the next 5 months? A public inquiry. I think that would be pretty helpful. Let's go to this Polyev clip, because basically he's saying that he's going to do what Johnston won't do if he needs to. And then maybe, I don't know, Tracy Wilson's in here. My buddy Tracy Wilson is in here, and maybe she has something to say, and I'm sort of putting her on the spot. So Tracy, if you don't want to talk, just tell me you don't want to talk, but give me a thumbs up if you do.
But unfortunately, there's no common sense in Justin Trudeau's Ottawa. We see today that his ski buddy, cottage neighbor, family friend, and member of the Beijing-financed Trudeau Foundation came out and did exactly what I predicted. Helped Trudeau cover up the influence by Beijing in our democracy. We know that Beijing interfered in 2 elections to help Trudeau win. We know that Beijing gave $140,000 to the Trudeau Foundation with the express purpose of buying the love and the loyalty of Justin Trudeau. And we know that Trudeau has been briefed on these matters for years and done absolutely nothing about it except try to keep it quiet and name call anyone who spoke out about it. And then in order to further sweep the matter under the rug, he put his friend, his ski buddy, his cottage neighbor, and Trudeau Foundation member, David Johnston, in charge of today's whitewash attempt. Well, conservatives are not buying it. We need a full public inquiry to get to the bottom of Beijing's interference in our democracy. And that's what I will deliver when I am Prime Minister. There will be a full public inquiry into this mess. And in the meantime, we will continue to push for a real foreign influence registry that exposes anyone who does paid work on behalf of a foreign dictatorship to manipulate our politics. It's just common sense. Let's bring it home. Let's bring home control of our democracy back into the hands of the Canadian.
You know, it's almost, you almost forget, right? Like how many scandals there have been. I almost forgot that not only is David Johnston a member of the Trudeau Foundation, but the Trudeau Foundation itself was given money. It was given from the CCP, it sounds like, to a Chinese billionaire and then gifted to the Trudeau Foundation. So he's a member of a foundation that's politically contaminated by Chinese money and a family friend of Justin Trudeau. And we're all supposed to just take his word for all of this. We've made Tracy a speaker. Tracy, what have you got to say?
Well, I think, you know, I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys. I'm watching this thing unfold. I think it's a travesty. As you know, I come from a military family. We've sacrificed a lot, given up a lot of people to ensure that our country remains free and democratic. And just to see this sort of banana republic type stuff going on, it's, you know, I think about my dad and my uncles and my grandfathers and all the other veterans rolling in their graves, wondering why this country just seems to, like, it's almost comical if it wasn't so tragic. So I'm watching that unfold. At the same time, you know, this is a little off topic, but it just sort of speaks to the, you know, the weirdness of this government. They're not a serious government. As you know, I work for the gun lobby. I work for the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights. And for the last couple of years, we've been trying to promote the first Saturday in June as National Range Day. And this has become a little bit of a problem for the Liberals because the last thing they want is good, you know, law-abiding, hardworking Canadians getting together and enjoying the outdoors. So today they've put forward an OIC proclamation demanding that the people of Canada observe the first Friday in June of every year as National Day Against Gun Violence. So this, of course, is in response to National Range Day. And the thought that this government is now tying a day to observe, you know, the fact that Canadians are against gun violence to National Range Day, to draw any kind of line between those two things is so reprehensible that I'm just sitting here in shock. Like, this government never ceases to amaze me. They just steamroll everything. Everything is upside down. It's upside down world. And I don't know what we can even do about it at this point.
You know, I hadn't heard that, but how outrageous. Like, to presume that the gun lobby and law-abiding gun owners like myself and like you, Tracy, that we would be pro-gun violence. Like, of course we're anti-gun violence. That's why we jump through all the hoops to own our firearms and have been pleading with the government for years for bail reform, for stricter sentences on those convicted of gun violence. My advice maybe is to take a Liberal to the gun range, because that is the quickest way to change their minds about just how much fun shooting is.
Absolutely. That we all know that the very best way to influence somebody's opinions about guns and gun ownership is to take them out shooting. But you're 100% right. The gun lobby is also the public safety lobby. So we also are against gun violence. And it's just sort of, you know, this is the unseriousness of this government to put through an OIC, to go through the effort just to make a statement to try and kick gun owners in the face one more time at a time when they should be focusing on trying to salvage what's left of their credibility on this Chinese interference file. I don't know. It's bananas. It's literally bananas.
It's a big distraction, right? Like the big Chinese interference show trial, I guess it is, as Pierre Poilievre so rightly put it, whitewashing. Yeah. And then the next day they're like, oh yeah, but we're against gun violence. Okay, great. Why did you remove the mandatory minimum sentences for those convicted of certain gun crimes? But yeah, it's just a big distraction. It's like a, hey, look over here. We care about you. In the meantime, they're, you know, benefiting from one of the more violent and odious regimes of the world.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you know, in a situation that we're in here in Canada, with a 32% rise in overall violent crime, a 92% rise, and I didn't misspeak there, 92% rise in gang homicide. And what is this government's solution to that? Is not only to attack gun owners, to ban our guns, to put more regulation on us, But here they come with the big save, a proclamation that they're against gun violence. Well, there we have it. It's solved. We're good.
Tracy, I'm against murder. I would just like you to know that. I would like to proclaim that I'm also against murder and theft and punching people in the face. I'm also against that. I mean, it's just so stupid. You know what I would like to see is a national inquiry into the rise in gang violence.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. But I wouldn't sit around waiting for that to happen. I mean, you've got
no, led by Bill Blair, the guy who oversaw it in Toronto. Yeah, no.
Well, you got Marco Mendicino in Longueuil, Quebec today, announcing $5 million in funding for at-risk youth to keep them out of gangs in a city in Quebec with a 47%. They're under the national average for violent crime, 47%. So it reminds me of the announcement in anti-gang funding for an East Coast town that they had gone to in the spring. And they asked the mayor during the press conference, are you having a problem with gang violence? And he says, oh, we don't have gangs here. And this is at an announcement for anti-gang funding. Like, it's clown world. Bananas.
Well, and if the Trudeau Liberals didn't have this unofficial, quote unquote, coalition with the NDP, then how much of this wouldn't be getting rammed through by this partnership that these two actual fringe minority governments have since formed in order to push their own agendas through?
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, everyone's really mad at Trudeau, and I am also. But you should be equally as mad as at Jagmeet, because he's allowing this government to act like they've got some kind of super majority and just get away with the most outlandish things. 20 years ago, none of this stuff would be happening. Like, none of it. It was 10 years ago, none of this stuff would be happening. It's crazy to see the difference in everything, right? Like, I don't even want to sound like some kind of conservative shill, but it does feel like everything is broken. And I don't know what it's going to take to get on track, and or if we can even have an election before the next scheduled one. But yeah, something's going to have to give eventually. I anticipate prorogation. That's what I think will happen.
Yeah, and moving forward with elections, how compromised are they moving ahead into the future? We've seen the last two, at least, have been meddled with and interfered. Is that all of a sudden going to stop because we have now this not at all conflict of interest riddled special rapporteur investigating all of the instances?
Yeah, I feel less confident in the whole thing than I did before the rapporteur. In fact, my 10-year-old grandson told me that a rapporteur is a type of pirate. I think he might be right at this point. Like, this is the level of buffoonery with this government. And, everyone's, the left is acting all appalled that anybody would even question his credibility. First of all, 99% of Canadians probably have never heard of him before this, right? So everyone, prancing around pretending that he's some kind of guy that should be up on a pedestal. I mean, give me a break. Most people couldn't have even named him if they had seen a picture of him a year ago, right? So it's a lot of play acting. But I have no guilt about that. When you tie yourself to something as dirty as this, you are putting your own reputation and credibility at risk. And I think, I don't think his elitism entitles him to a free pass here. In fact, the exact opposite. So he put himself in this position and he's going to have to live with it.
Exactly. If you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen, right? Yeah. Is how they say.
Yeah. If he had that credibility, he would have turned the job down. He would have said, no, this isn't for me. I have a conflict of interest.
A normal person would have said, okay, well, I understand that criticism, but here's why I don't accept it. Like, they would have offered some sort of explanation about why there's some daylight in between him and the Trudeau family or whatever. Instead, he's just so appalled that the peasants are got some ideas in their heads that he doesn't like. Like, he just completely dismisses it and says, oh, well, I never, it's just answer the criticism, answer it honestly, but don't tell people to shut up, because that indicates to me that there's some truth to the criticism, or a lot of truth to the criticism.
Yeah. Well, and I'm right with you on that. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't know the entire history of Canada as far as governor generals go. But at the same time, I don't care what position you had. There's all kinds of really important people in my own family, and just because you've held a prestigious title or were given some sort of appointment along the way at some point, that doesn't clear you of responsibility that you've got behind that, right? So I don't know. I just feel like for us regular plebs, it's, we're just being told to shut up and how dare you question anything, and, just shut up and take your 2 cents and go somewhere else. And I don't know. I don't think this is going to go away. If that was the idea, to get him to rule in this way and deem that there won't be a public inquiry and think that they would be able to sweep that under the rug, I think what's happened is they've re-energized it. It's done the exact opposite thing. So let the Liberal government go down in flames. Let David Johnston's reputation go down in flames. At this point, it's time to let that happen and just start with a clean slate.
Yeah, if they don't want me to think that they're covering something up, maybe they shouldn't act exactly like someone who's trying to cover something up. Yeah. Like if you had to plot it on a board, what would you do if you're trying to cover up foreign interference? How could you make sure that the outcome was exactly what you wanted? I don't think I could have done anything differently than what the Liberals are doing right now. Tamara, maybe you want to cue up this last Poilievre clip. Yes. When there's a reporter trying to give him a tough time about, aren't you going to listen to David Johnston because he's so special and he's done all these important things and he's a very elite man and he's from a privileged class in Canada and he's very, very smart, don't you know? So aren't you going to shut up and listen to him? Poilievre answers exactly the way he should have answered.
I presume you watched Mr. Johnston's presentation earlier today, and he said that when he started the process, he thought that he would conclude there should be a public inquiry. He didn't come to that conclusion because he says there's a lot of confidential information. Now, one thing he proposes, he's going to have public hearings about things that he can talk about in public, but he also invited the 3 opposition leaders, which includes you, to join NSICOP. Would you join NSICOP?
David Johnston is Trudeau's ski buddy. You're
not answering the question.
I'll answer it how I choose. You get to ask the question, I get to answer it. I'll choose how I answer it. And the answer is that David Johnston is a ski buddy, chalet neighbor, family friend, and member of the Trudeau Foundation. He has no business in this job because it is a fake job that he is incapable of doing impartially. And none of his recommendations can be taken seriously because he's in a conflict of interest. And frankly, it's incredible that he didn't even mention the Trudeau Foundation in his report, even though publicly available intelligence showed that the dictatorship in Beijing had given money to the Trudeau Foundation for the express purpose of buying the love and loyalty of Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, Johnston's part of the Trudeau Foundation, so of course he wouldn't want to investigate himself. But frankly, that's why he should have recused himself. As for any proposals he might have to silence me, the answer is no, I will not be silenced. Thank you.
Will you be joining NSICOP?
No.
I love that the reporter pushes back against Poilievre for claiming before he had even really started a full sentence that he wasn't answering the question. I wish they would do that with anyone from the Liberal Party who quite literally just skirts around every single question that they're asked and never gives a direct, straightforward answer, as Poilievre does very clearly and repeatedly on a regular basis.
Well, you can see why the mainstream media hates Poilievre. But stuff like that makes me really like him because they need to be put in their place. A journalist asking that question is someone who is obviously colonized by Justin Trudeau money, and Justin Trudeau doesn't have money. He has our money to give to these people. And so would that question have been asked any differently if that were a Liberal Party staffer than a member of the mainstream media? Probably not.
Well, and the whole response as well lends further into what we've already been chatting about, is that if this special rapporteur had such integrity as he proclaims for himself to have, and how dare you question my integrity and my wherewithal, then he would have recused himself just based on the simple fact that he was a Trudeau Foundation participant that received funding from the very governance who is said to be interfering. Like the whole thing, gosh, as I say it out loud, it gets more and more messy and just unbelievable that this is real life. And I think Tracy put it best. This is upside down, bizarro world. And it's just been so heightened and highlighted by the handling of COVID-19, which was so similar to the way that China, as an authoritarian dictatorship, handled their pandemic response. It leads many concerned, critical Canadians to wonder, did that have anything to do with the fact that we have had direct Chinese CCP meddling in our democracy now for at least since 2019. So we're going on 5 years of this interference. And not only the interference in and of itself is an issue, but how has that ricocheted and affected the policy being developed by these governments as they proceed with governance? So there's the interference in and of itself, but then there's also how it's actually affected the political structure and the political class over the last few years.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, in the airports, they had warnings, like if you were coming from COVID hotspots, which at the time were basically Wuhan, China, and I think maybe Italy, but it was mostly Wuhan, China. If you were going through customs, they had these like warning things on like these signs. And then pretty quickly those signs disappeared. And I filed for access to information on that. And I don't think I got quite all the records. But how much of that was motivated by CCP leaning on Transport Canada, or at least leaning on the Liberals who would then lean on Transport Canada to remove those things, because wouldn't you know, it's racist to point out that that's a COVID hotspot. So, you know, like looking back in hindsight being 2020, boy, it sure looks like there's a lot of things that now make even more sense when you know just how deep the tentacles of the CCP were reaching into the Liberal Party.
And likely continue unabated today.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's making me a conspiracy theorist worse than normal. It's not good for me.
And likewise on all of our viewers, I'm sure too. But we have another clip to share with you just to wrap up the rapporteur nonsense. Yes. This one comes from Trudeau, so brace yourselves for his breathy voice.
Barf.
So he basically is responding to the release of this report and a media question on the political risk of not holding a public inquiry.
Given the reaction from opposition leaders, are you concerned at all about the political risk of not holding a public inquiry?
Like I said, I look forward to party leaders choosing to actually get the security briefings, security clearances necessary to see the facts that underpin this report, so that going forward we can continue to have robust, informed debates on the best way to keep Canadians safe in a world in which foreign interference is increasingly a challenge for us, for all of our allies as well. I don't think Canadians would want or expect any of their leaders to choose ignorance when they can choose to have the facts laid out for them. And I can assure you, in our democracy, there are always going to be plenty of things to criticize a government on and to challenge us to do better. But let us, please, ground it in an understanding of the true facts and not choose to risk weakening Canadians' confidence in our institutions by building partisan attacks on things that are patently untrue.
Well, I'm substantially dumber for having listened to that. I don't think that Justin Trudeau can choose ignorance. I think he's just a very stupid man. But where's the journalists screaming, "You're not answering the question. You're not answering the question." They just let him prattle on for 90 seconds of our lives that we will never get back. And time is finite. And unfortunately, we just gave some of it to Justin Trudeau. But he gets to not answer the question and say, like, don't choose ignorance, make sure you get the security clearance. This isn't about politicians having security clearances. This is about Canadians getting answers about how compromised our democracy is. And he doesn't think we're entitled to it. He thinks that he's smarter than us, which is exactly what a stupid person would think, and that we couldn't possibly get our stupid little minds around this stuff.
Yeah, and he's always espousing the facts and keeping Canadians safe, but it's only the facts that Justin Trudeau wants to believe, and it's only the facts that he wants to garner, and it's only the facts that people in his tight-knit circle can collect and discover that are relevant to follow and to share. Anyone, again, who questions any of that is slandered, they're smeared, they're gaslit, and how dare you question my government and the integrity of who I appoint that has direct conflict of interest ties with me. Justin Trudeau likes to follow his own facts, and anyone who brings things that are contrary to those facts to the table is gaslit and disregarded with some sort of ad hominem attack, because that's what he seems to be best at, and not actually following the facts.
Well, I think we're experiencing this differently, Tamara. Than he is.
Justin Trudeau, yeah, he's experiencing it differently.
Yeah, us women, we experience things differently than Justin Trudeau. Let's button up this topic. I've had just about enough of David Johnston. And let's move on to something that you've been following very closely, and that's the World Health Organization and the Global Pandemic Treaty.
Yes. And sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'll shut up.
Well, I wanted to say I haven't been following it as closely as I probably should, because this organization, the World Health Organization, operates in such veiled secrecy and behind closed doors and backdoor discussions that you would almost need to dedicate like your entire life to following what they're doing. And there's this global pandemic treaty, but there's also changes to existing signed agreements through the international health regulations. So there's these two things happening at once, and each one needs a full-time dedicated person or group of people to follow them, because they have this powerhouse of members and states and lobbyists and people involved in the process that for any one individual to try to follow it and piece it all together, it's a lot. But this particular article, and I'm sorry that we can't obviously share it with you on screen, comes from True North, and it's called the World Health Organization's chief, so that's Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, says global health pandemic treaty is necessary in dealing with the next deadly virus. So we can all rest assured that there will be another deadly virus. And whether or not they've learned anything from their failed COVID-19 related pandemic response, I guess, is yet to be seen. But essentially what the WHO is trying to do through both of these various treaties and the changes, the amendments to the international health regulations, is to give themselves more power. So as though they didn't already have enough power to impose things like indiscriminate lockdowns, recommend, and I use that word loosely because as we've seen, recommendations turn to mandates pretty quickly in terms of mask mandates and vaccine passports. But now what they're trying to do through this pandemic treaty and the health regulations is to centralize their power and ensure that the health decisions of what were once sovereign nations can be left in the hands of the Director General of the World Health Organization. And so this is something that a lot of people are following very closely, as we have this article here from True North that goes into it a little bit. They also highlight here in this article that the WHO recently saw a substantial hike to its budget, checking in at $6.83 billion for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. And this is primarily funded by Beijing, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and places like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and their subsidiary, which is Gavi. And so these are big pharma oligarchs and dictatorships primarily funding the World Health Organization, but obviously also our hard-earned tax dollars, since Canada is a member state and has been for decades. We also fund this organization and apparently have a say in terms of the voting capacity on things like a global pandemic treaty. But our health overlords, Health Minister Duclos, they obviously the Chief Public Health Officer, Theresa Tam, who used to sit on their board of directors or a member, an advisory board. That profile has since been removed after Canadians questioned whether or not Theresa Tam worked for Canadians or for the CCP-centric WHO. And so they're all in cahoots with it. They love the World Health Organization. They think that their advice was top-notch throughout the pandemic. It was a necessary evil, as it's been coined, to apparently stop the spread of COVID-19 while causing mass casualties to our economy, the livelihoods of Canadians, and our ability to maintain good financial standing. So
yeah, I was just going to say, they're not wrong to say that we should probably take the next global pandemic seriously. But we do know, as pandemics tend to do, it will emerge from China. They continue to emerge from China. I don't know what they're doing over there. Well, I've got some theories about what they're doing over there and why pandemics continue to emerge from there. So perhaps we should do our best to disentangle our supply chains from China so that we're not as catastrophically hit the next time China barfs a virus into the world. But I also look at the World Health Organization at this point as a perpetual motion machine. So it needs the next pandemic to make sure that it becomes relevant, right? And as most governmental, but also these super governmental, I would call this, organizations tend to do, they love power. They just love it. And every time they get a taste for it, they want a little bit more. That's why the infringements on civil liberties almost never go backwards. They always go forward because it gets normalized and then they take a little more. And then it gets normalized and they take a little more. That's what the World Health Organization is doing here. And I'm so glad you pointed out the increase in funding. That was the one thing that I sort of had circled on my screen here. Because Canada disproportionately funds the World Health Organization. We're the fifth largest contributor to the World Health Organization at $212 million in 2020-2021, which is shocking given just how small our population is. But I also clicked through the link that True North had provided because I was curious. And I was like, well, how much did China provide? Well, we are outpacing China for donations to the World Health Organization. So given the catastrophic chaos caused by the CCP and their cover-up of a pandemic, and I think probably their psyop that made it seem a lot worse than it actually was, with those people dropping dead in the streets that I'm almost absolutely convinced were just actors at this point. You'd think that they would give a little bit more, but they're not. We are outpacing them with donations to the World Health Organization. And I'm sure that's going to continue for as long as the Liberals are in power.
Yeah, and this consolidation of power really strips away the health sovereignty of individual nations to make their own individual response plans and undermines the ability for member states to see that through. And so this consolidation and this centralization of health is really, it's a strange undertaking because health is naturally individualized. And so as we've seen with public health just making a mess of themselves, of their reputation over the last 3 years, that's kind of the ideology of the greater good and of the masses in the population. And there's space for that. But health in and of itself comes on a more individual level. And so for the WHO to just centralize and consolidate their power, undermine the individual sovereignty of countries and even communities, as we saw with the pandemic response, it shouldn't have been the same across the board. There should have been differences, different response plans. And I think that this consolidation of power is of concern just in developing our own and having the ability to develop our own individual plans moving forward. But yeah, this looming threat of the next viral pandemic definitely just lends to the fact that the WHO is trying to remain relevant and ensure their stranglehold on power remains.
Yeah. We should move ahead to this last thing on our list because you and I have to both be in a meeting very soon.
Right.
So this one I want to talk about, again, it's from True North. Our friends at True North are doing some incredible work on this. The reason I want to talk about this is because it's fresh in my mind. I just talked about it with Josh Andrus from Project Confederation. And it's Liberal Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault issued a veiled threat to provinces as the feds face a showdown over the federal clean electricity standard, which would ban fossil fuel power generation by 2035. So that includes natural gas, which is very clean burning. If you care about those sorts of things, I'm not sure that I do, but I hear that other people care about that stuff. The problem with natural gas is that you can't have on-site storage of it the way you can have just like a mountain of coal sitting next door to a coal plant. But speaking on Wednesday, Guilbeault claimed that those not complying with his government's new regulations would be in violation of the criminal code. He said, we've regulated the ban on coal through the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which is a criminal tool that the federal government has, said Guilbeault. So those not complying with this regulation would be a violation of Canada's criminal code. So reacting to the minister's comments, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said he would risk jail despite the threat. If someone's going to jail, come get me, said Scott Moe. I love this because Saskatchewan, for better or for worse, and I've got some skepticism about the necessity of carbon capture. They do carbon capture to offset their emissions. Again, if you care about those sorts of things, and I'm not going to concede that I do. So they basically already have net zero in their coal production. But what are you going to do? You know what's going to happen to Alberta? If you, because of the NDP's bad energy policy here, which took us off coal, and we are the Saudi Arabia of coal in Alberta, might I add. It just comes out of the ground all over the place. We have 800 years of some of the cleanest burning coal on the face of the earth under our feet, and the NDP opted to basically euthanize our coal communities to, I don't know, please Justin Trudeau, really. So what happens is we buy, because you can never get away from coal-fired electricity. It's just so damn reliable. So when Alberta sees a shortfall in our grid, you know where we buy from? Saskatchewan. So we can't use our own coal, but we buy coal-fired electricity from them. And when Saskatchewan says, you know what, we can't help you today, good friends to the west, have you considered going to Wyoming and Montana to buy your electricity? So we do, and guess what? Coal-fired again. So Guilbeault is crazy. He's threatening to send a premier to jail. And what's going to happen is nothing, because when Saskatchewan doesn't have coal-fired electricity, they're going to do exactly what we do here in Alberta. We're going to go to Wyoming and say, can you help us? And quite frankly, we'll probably even sell Wyoming thermal coal. So we'll mine it and send it to them. And we're not allowed to burn it, but we will buy the electricity back that they generated with it. It's crazy. By the way, yeah, I would love to see them take Scott Moe away in handcuffs. Not because I don't like Scott Moe. I like him more and more every day. But imagine the audacity of the federal government. Justin Trudeau, Mr. Ethics violation, foreign influence on behalf of the Chinese, and he's going to arrest a premier because he wants to keep energy affordable for Saskatchewan families. What a maniac.
Wasn't he also arrested for his advocacy work with
Greenpeace?
Greenpeace, yes, thank you.
Yeah, there's that famous picture of him in orange coveralls. Yeah.
So the criminal himself is now criminalizing the use of fossil fuel power. Great.
Yeah.
The irony.
Yeah.
It's not lost on me. All right. Well, we are 2 minutes over our spaces. So I guess we should probably wrap.
With me as I was about 3 minutes late to the show.
Likewise, thanks to all of our viewers, and we'll catch you maybe here again tomorrow, but we'll have to wait and see.
Probably. Stay tuned for the announcement. You know what the best way to know exactly what we're doing is if you go to rebelnews.com and you give us your email address in the very first pop-up that comes there that says, like, stay connected with us. We might be censored, which is true. Just give us your email address, and then if there's changes to the live streams or if we have a special Twitter Spaces or a subscriber-only Twitter Space, which is something that you can do too. Just give us your email address and we'll let you know about the comings and goings at the company, because we want you to know we're doing stuff, and we want to sort of brag about it a little bit.
All right. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.
Twitter Spaces.
Bye.